1,950 seconds weren't just a decade, they were a revolution wrapped in 3-minute songs. Before rock and roll had a name, before anyone knew what this wild, rebellious music would become, there were these 12 songs that changed everything. Today, we're going back to where it all began, the hits that made history and gave birth to the sound that would never die. The guitar strummed with a rhythm that felt ancient and brand new all at once. Ritchie Valens took a traditional Mexican folk song and electrified it, turning it into something the whole world could dance to. Released in 1958, when he was just 17 years old, this wasn't just music, it was cultural fusion before anyone had a word for it. A Mexican-American kid from California proved that rock and roll belonged to everyone who had fire in their heart. Tragically, Valens would be gone within months, but this song became immortal. They say lightning doesn't strike twice, but somehow Ritchie captured it in a single recording. Do you think a song today could have the same impact as La Bamba did? Close your eyes and you're back at a high school dance in 1954. The lights are low, the floor is crowded, and this song is playing while couples sway in slow circles. Earth Angel was more than doo-wop, it was the sound of young love finding its voice. The Penguins created something so tender, so vulnerable, that it became the anthem for every teenager who ever felt their heart race over someone special. This was the song playing when your grandparents fell in love. The harmonies were pure, the emotion was real, and the moment was everything. Frankie Lyman was only 13 when his voice soared through this song and changed pop music forever. That high, innocent soprano asking the eternal question felt like pure joy wrapped in confusion. The teenagers weren't just a group, they were proof that youth had something urgent to say. This song bounced through transistor radios in 1956 like electricity through a wire. It was innocent and knowing at the same time. Capturing that impossible moment when you're old enough to feel love but too young to understand it. Frankie sang like he'd lived 1,000 heartbreaks, and he hadn't even finished middle school. Even seasoned musicians were stunned by how someone so young could deliver such emotional depth with total natural ease. His voice carried a kind of bright fragility that made every note feel both exhilarating and heartbreakingly brief. When that opening scream tore through the speakers, the world had never heard anything like it. Little Richard didn't just sing Tutti Frutti, he detonated it, unleashing a wild, untamed energy that made parents nervous and teenagers ecstatic. This was 1955, and suddenly music had color, chaos, and uncontainable joy. The song was raw, fast, and gloriously absurd in the best possible way. She knows how to love me, yes indeed. Little Richard's piano pounded like a runaway train while his voice did things that shouldn't have been possible. This wasn't just the birth of rock and roll, it was the moment music realized it didn't have to behave anymore. Carl Perkins wrote it first, drawing a line in the sand. You can mess with anything, but don't step on the shoes. It was rockabilly perfection. That blend of country twang and rhythm and blues that created something entirely new. When Elvis recorded his version, he turned it into a cultural explosion. Those blue suede shoes became a symbol of teenage rebellion and pride in 1956. It wasn't about the shoes at all, it was about having something that was yours, something that mattered in a world that didn't always take young people seriously. The driving beat and that unforgettable guitar riff made it impossible to sit still. If you could see only one of these songs performed live in the 50s, which one would you choose? Elvis swaggered in tune 1957 with a song that was pure cinematic swagger. Jailhouse Rock had a beat like a sledgehammer and lyrics that turned a prison into the hippest place on earth. The way Elvis growled and crooned through it made every word feel dangerous and thrilling. This was Elvis at his absolute peak, young, hungry, and undeniable. The song came from a movie, but it exploded far beyond the screen, becoming one of those rare moments where everything aligned perfectly. The rebellion wasn't just in the lyrics, it was in every gyration, every curled lip, every note that made the establishment nervous. Which of these early hits still feels like the true beginning of rock and roll to you? Chuck Berry told a story that every kid with a dream could understand. A country boy who couldn't read or write but could play guitar like he was ringing a bell. That was the American dream set to the greatest guitar riff ever conceived. Released in 1958, this song became the blueprint for rock and roll itself. That opening riff didn't just start a song, it started a movement. Berry's guitar work was revolutionary. His storytelling was cinematic, and his energy was infectious. Decades later, NASA would send this song into space on the Voyager probe, representing humanity to the stars. That's how universal, how perfect Johnny B. Good really was.
Head on my shoulder.
Paul Anka was barely 18 when he wrote this tender invitation to intimacy. Put Your Head on My Shoulder arrived in 1959 like a soft whisper in a world that had been shouting. It was gentle, romantic, and achingly sincere, the kind of song that made slow dancing feel like the most important thing in the world.
If there's a way.
There was something deeply vulnerable about asking someone to simply rest their head on your shoulder. Anka's smooth voice made every word feel like a promise, a moment of safety and connection. This was the song playing when someone worked up the courage to hold you close for the first time. For many, it became the soundtrack of that first dizzy, unforgettable moment when affection finally turned into something real.
Dream, 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 dream.
The Everly Brothers created pure harmony magic in 1958 with voices that blended like they shared the same heartbeat. All I Have to Do Is Dream floated on air, creating a dreamy landscape where longing felt beautiful instead of painful. Their voices intertwined so perfectly it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. This song captured that wonderful teenage feeling of being so in love that just thinking about someone made them real. The production was lush, the melody was unforgettable, and the emotion was achingly genuine. It was the sound of yearning transformed into something sweet and hopeful.
Just like we used to do, I'm always walking.
Patsy Cline stepped into 1957 with a voice that could break your heart and put it back together in the same breath. Walking After Midnight blurred the lines between country and pop, creating something hauntingly beautiful. Her voice carried a loneliness that felt universal, a midnight wandering that everyone understood. There was wisdom beyond her years in the way Patsy sang about searching for a lost love. The song had a jazzy, nocturnal feel that was completely unique for its time.
As I can be, I go out walking.
She wasn't just a country singer, she was an artist painting portraits of heartache with her voice, and this song proved she belonged to everyone. Even today, her performance feels like a quiet confession whispered under streetlights no one else remembers. When Bill Haley counted off 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock rock, he was counting down to a cultural revolution. Released in 1954, this song became the anthem that announced rock and roll had arrived, and it wasn't asking permission. It was featured in Blackboard Jungle, and suddenly teenagers had their own soundtrack. The song was relentless, joyful, and built for dancing until dawn. Bill Haley and his Comets played with an energy that felt both dangerous and irresistible. Parents worried, teenagers celebrated, and radio stations couldn't stop playing it. This was the moment when everything changed, when the old guard realized they couldn't stop what was coming.
I'm lonely, but no one can tell.
The Platters opened 1955 with a confession that cut straight to the heart. The Great Pretender was about wearing a mask, about smiling through heartbreak, about fooling everyone except yourself. Tony Williams' lead vocals soared with such vulnerability that you could feel every crack in the facade. This wasn't just doo-wop, it was sophisticated, orchestral, and emotionally complex.
Laughing and
The Platters proved that rock and roll's new era could handle depth and nuance, that you could break hearts slowly and beautifully. The song topped the charts for weeks because everyone recognized themselves in that pretending, in that desperate attempt to look fine when you're falling apart. It became an anthem for anyone who ever hid their true feelings behind a practiced smile. Decades later, its honesty still feels like a mirror held up to the soul. These weren't just songs, they were the sound of the world tilting on its axis. From sock hops to drive-ins, from malt shops to late-night radio, these 12 hits rewrote the rules and gave voice to a generation that refused to stay quiet. If this journey back to where it all began stirred something in your soul, share it with someone who still believes in the magic of a perfect 3-minute song. Tell us which of these classics still makes you feel young again?